This is not breaking news. This is not a scandal. This is not about one person. This is about a system discovering in real time that it no longer knows how to restrain the power it created. Quietly, procedurally, without an emergency lever. What happened today only looked dramatic because the rules finally collided with something they were never designed to touch directly. And when that happens, institutions don't fail loudly, they hesitate, they improvise, they leave marks that don't fade. You were told this system was stable, that it had answers for edge cases, that precedent would carry the weight. But what happens when the edge case becomes the center? When the rulebook is suddenly thinner than the moment demands, this isn't about punishment or fairness or personalities. It's about whether authority still knows where it ends. And if it doesn't, someone else will decide for it. If you want to understand where that line is actually moving, stay with me, because this moment doesn't close, it opens. The mistake is thinking this system is driven by people. It isn't, not anymore. What controls it now is procedure under stress. Rules written for normal conditions suddenly forced to operate inside an abnormal reality. And when that happens, the rules don't disappear, they harden. Courts are not designed to weigh political gravity. They are designed to enforce order, one question at a time, one instruction at a time. Authority flows downward, not outward. That works until the subject of that authority carries power that exists outside the room, power the courtroom can't neutralize, only ignore or confront. So the system defaults to what it knows: process, warnings, escalation, removal. Each step technically correct, each step narrower than the moment demands. This is how systems protect themselves, not by adapting quickly, but by insisting the old logic still applies. And that insistence creates friction between legitimacy and enforcement, between symbolism and control. That friction doesn't resolve itself. It builds heat. And the longer it's treated as routine, the more dangerous it becomes. For decades, the safeguard wasn't a single rule. It was pace, time, delay. The understanding that certain lines existed, but no one rushed toward them. Before, presidents stayed distant from courtrooms, courts stayed distant from presidents, not because the law demanded it, but because the system survived on restraint. That changed slowly, almost politely. Norms weren't broken, they were outgrown. Legal pressure increased, political pressure increased, media pressure compressed everything. And what used to unfold over years now unfolds live, in days, sometimes minutes. The most dangerous shift wasn't confrontation, it was normalization. Each unprecedented step followed another. Each first time was framed as manageable, temporary, contextual, until the accumulation itself became the crisis. You were told this was accountability catching up, or politics intruding. But the deeper change is structural. The buffer zones dissolved. The system moved from avoidance to exposure, from symbolic distance to physical proximity. And systems behave very differently when there's no distance left. What looks like a single tense moment is actually the end of a long, quiet migration. And once a system finishes migrating, it doesn't go back. What happened in that room wasn't chaos. It was procedure snapping into visibility. A judge asked a narrow question. A warning followed, then another. And when the script failed, the system reached for the only tool it has left when order breaks down: removal. That moment is being treated like the story. It isn't. It's a diagnostic flare. Judges remove disruptive defendants all the time. That power is old, boring, routine. What made this different wasn't the action. It was the collision between a routine mechanism and an extraordinary position. The system did what it was built to do: maintain order, continue without the defendant, preserve the process even if the presence becomes the problem. Legally sound, historically rare. Politically radioactive, and here's the quiet part. Once that switch is flipped, it doesn't reset easily. The hearing continues, Authority remains intact, absence becomes normalized. And suddenly, a line that was once unthinkable has been crossed without collapsing anything. If you're still watching, that matters. Because moments like this don't announce their consequences. They plant them. And the system just learned something about itself. The question is what it does with that knowledge next. Here's the part most people never see. The system doesn't run on outrage or principle. It runs on incentives and insulation. When pressure rises, responsibility doesn't disappear. It moves. Upward for authority, downward for damage. The hidden mechanism is delegation without accountability. Judges enforce rules, prosecutors pursue cases, attorneys argue motions, each role stays narrow, each actor can say they followed procedure, and in doing so, no one owns the cumulative outcome. That's how stress is absorbed, not by leaders, by the structure itself. The court preserves order. The political system absorbs fallout. The public absorbs confusion, and the precedent hardens quietly beneath it all. Who benefits? The institution that survives intact. Who pays? Everyone operating inside the uncertainty it creates. Because once the system proves it can proceed without presence, without clarity, without consensus, it sets a template. This isn't about one courtroom. It's about a mechanism that allows power to be constrained procedurally while remaining politically explosive. That imbalance doesn't resolve tension, it transfers it forward. And transferred tension always comes back louder. Because the system hasn't answered the question, it's postponed it, now the pace changes. Shorter warnings, less patience, more force, because once the mechanism is exposed, it starts repeating itself faster. The same rules applied under higher pressure produce harsher outcomes. Not because anyone wants escalation, but because the system has no softer gear left. Hearings continue without presence. Motions stack. Appeals hover. Every procedural choice becomes a signal, not legally, politically. And signals invite response from supporters, from critics, from institutions watching closely and taking notes. This is the second shock. Not removal, but normalization after removal. The realization that the process did not stop, that nothing broke, that the system kept moving forward as if this were survivable. That discovery is destabilizing because it teaches everyone involved a lesson. Authority can proceed, resistance can be sidelined, and the consequences won't arrive immediately. So pressure shifts elsewhere, into public trust, into political legitimacy, into future cases that will now cite this moment without its context. Faster, harsher, less cautious. No speeches, no explosions, just momentum. And momentum is the one thing systems rarely know how to slow. Because once escalation becomes routine, the next step no longer feels extreme. It feels inevitable. Here's where it reaches you, not abstractly, directly. Because when institutions start improvising under pressure, certainty becomes a luxury. And you live inside the gap that creates. You feel it when rules seem firm one day and flexible the next. When authority feels absolute in one context and strangely fragile in another, when the system insists it's working while asking you to accept outcomes it never prepared you for, you're told this is exceptional, temporary, that it won't affect how justice functions for everyone else. But that's not how systems behave once stress testing becomes public. They don't shrink back. They recalibrate around the stress. That means longer timelines, harsher enforcement, fewer informal breaks. It means the distance between power and procedure narrows everywhere, not just at the top. And you absorb the uncertainty while institutions preserve continuity. If you're still watching, that's not accidental. Because this story isn't about legal drama. It's about whether the rules that govern power can still feel predictable to the people living under them. If this feels unsettling, stay with me. We're not at the outer edge yet. Once this kind of stress becomes visible, it doesn't stay contained. other systems notice, other governments notice. Not the spectacle, but the mechanics. They watch how authority is enforced, how legitimacy is preserved, how much disruption a system can absorb before it changes shape. Because this isn't just about one country testing its institutions in public, it's about whether a mature democracy can prosecute power without destabilizing itself. That question travels fast, through courts, through markets, through alliances built on the assumption of internal stability. When legal uncertainty surrounds leadership, it bleeds outward. Negotiations slow. Commitments feel conditional. Rivals probe. Partners hedge. Not because they doubt outcomes, but because they sense hesitation. And hesitation is information. The ripple effect isn't dramatic. It's procedural. Quiet adjustments. Shorter horizons, contingency planning where confidence used to live. The system still functions, but trust becomes provisional. And once trust turns provisional, everyone starts planning for alternatives, not collapse, just adjustment. But adjustment is how systems drift, and drift over time becomes direction. We are no longer watching a local process. We're watching a signal propagate. And no one is entirely sure how far it goes. From here, the system has three paths. None of them are clean. The first is adjustment. The institutions absorb the shock and quietly rewrite their behavior. New informal rules emerge, judges become more cautious, timelines stretch. Power is managed through avoidance rather than confrontation. The system survives by bending, but bending changes shape. And once reshaped, it never fully returns. The second path is erosion. Each procedural decision chips away at shared legitimacy, not through collapse, but through accumulation, appeals, delays, conflicting rulings. Public confidence thins. Authority still